History. If you make a small mistake, you're off by centuries. I'm Anubhav Saransh and this is the GS Room. If history were maybe a Netflix genre, would it be a thriller, a drama, epic saga? What do you feel?
That'll be a mixture of all of these things.
History has such a split reputation. I mean, half the aspirants love it and the other half just survive it somehow.
Problem is not with the subject as such, the way it has been taught to us.
How can students connect modern history with, say, ethics or maybe governance? Since
Modern India is not just about kicking away the British, but what kind of system we do bring in its place.
many aspirants do or treat modern India as pure events, right? Do you think it should also be understood more as an evolution of the political consciousness in the country?
Point is not just about kicking the British away, but the question is, after the British are gone, once you lose the track, then everything will get muddled up and then you will start feeling it as a burden.
So, history, the only subject where if you make a small mistake, you're off by centuries. Some aspirants love it, some fear it, and most just try to survive it, from Harappa to the world wars. And in UPSC, history is never about mugging up facts. It's also about understanding how past shapes our present. And that's what we are going to do here today. Exactly that. Understanding all about history for UPSC. And for that, we have someone here who has mastered all the eras, the legendary faculty, Uday Simha Sir. Hello, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
So let's begin with our first question, maybe on a slightly fun note. If history were maybe a Netflix genre, would it be a thriller, a drama, epic saga? What do you feel?
Sir, in my opinion, that will be a mixture of all of these things. Because definitely you will have some ups and downs, some pains and sorrows and happinesses. So this is a drama, as you say, going on since the evolution of humans and it's continuing even today. And as time rolls on, things will keep going on with all a mixture of so many emotions. The drama, thriller and epics, everything will be there.
That's true. So, one more question. I mean, why do you think history has such a split reputation? I mean, half the aspirants love it and the other half just survive it somehow.
Problem is not with the subject as such, but the way it has been taught to us. So if generally in my classes, whenever I address students for the first time, I ask them to pay an attention to the word history itself. Because if you see the word itself, the word contains story. So history must be told in a story format. And if that is done, I think the burden is on the teacher. Then probably, as you said, that split reputation for history will soon die. Because much depends on the teacher, how he narrates the story in an interesting and a fascinating manner, so that students put themselves in the place of the historical characters they are studying. For suppose if we are discussing something about Chandragupta Maurya, how he toppled the Nanda dynasty and with the help of Kautilya, he establishes the Mauryan dynasty. Perhaps if you just read it like a story, we might enjoy it to some extent. At the same time, putting yourself in the shoes of Chandragupta Maurya or a kingmaker like a Chanakya, probably we will actually start enjoying the subject simply trying to mug it up.
Just to extend this, when students say that history is just mugging up dates, are they wrong or are we teaching it in such a manner that it kills curiosity completely?
Exactly, sir. That's what I was just now trying to say. So no doubt history, we'll have to study about some centuries of past. And that too, as of now, it's in UPS, it's not only Indian history. We'll also have to study some part of world history as well. No doubt we'll have to remember some battles, some years and dates and names of personalities. But still, when all of these things come in a story format, the burden is actually on the teacher. As students, we should not blame, sir. That is my opinion, very frankly. As you are saying, problem is in we delivering the subject.
I think I had discussed earlier as well that most of the fear that students have, be it for maths, be it for economics or history, whatever, stems from the school days, sadly, right, where it has been taught in such a fashion that you have to score marks, and the fear for maths also or history or geography, any subject, stems from those times only. Fair enough, fair point, sir. So, one more question, sir. What is the biggest mistake that aspirants make when they open this entire syllabus of history, considering that, it has so many layers? You have ancient India, medieval India, modern India, world history, art and culture, post independence, right? So, what is one big mistake that aspirants make?
So first of all, they do not know the correct chronological order in which they'll have to start picking up. Suppose if you randomly start from world history, probably you'll get a larger picture, but then you'll lose the game there because you'll not be able to connect one component with another. But in my opinion, sir, as I go for the classes, it is order comes in this way: ancient India first, medieval India. Then I don't jump into modern. After ancient and medieval, both are connected in a way, in a chronological manner. I shift the concentration towards world history. Because in modern India, we are going to study about how the British ruled India. And in world history, we get an idea about what happened in Europe that made Britain so powerful, such that a small country like Britain could come and conquer and rule such a big country like ours. So, ancient medieval world, and then we go to modern, and after modern, post independence, because modern India ends in 1947, and you can straight away take up that threads from there, and finally close this with the most factual section of history, that is art and culture. Because surely art and culture is the least conceptual part, sir, and a lot of facts to mug up. That we cannot escape. That much we must.
That's true. That's true. So there you have it, guys. I mean, we need to follow the proper chronology of understanding and studying history. Okay. So if we talk about ancient India, that's where you begin the entire journey. Why do you think students find it so dry, even though it's a foundation of the civilization, but still so dry? Why is that the case?
The same problem, sir, as you said. Never in our school days, a genuine curiosity has been created to study our own past. And now, I think this is a problem with an Indian mindset, not from now, sir, not from our school age also. The very fact that Indian history, a systematic study, was started not by Indian scholars, but by British scholars, speaks volumes about our, what you say, lethargy or lack of interest in knowing about who we were. And I think that's one a curse seriously on Indians. And that's the reason we are going wayward, our youth and all these people. Not knowing the roots from where you come, you do not really have any a goal in life, and all these things.
So there's also so much debate around the sources, right? NCRTs, R.S. Sharma, Upinder Singh, maybe Tamil Nadu textbooks and all. So what's the smart way to approach these sources?
So, with respect to history textbooks, there is a small complication that we need to notice even before we start reading these books. Because what has happened in the past is one thing, but the way we see what has happened in the past, it depends upon the perspective. For instance, all the NCRT textbooks right now that we have been studying since long have all been written in the Congress era. So, primarily by leftist historians. So, the leftist Marxist historians have given their perspective on the India's past in our textbooks. But today you have a government in power which is of a different political orientation. They fall on the right side of the political spectrum. So it's not simply so easy anymore that, as in the case of before 2014, you whatever you read in the NCRTs, you go and dump in the exam and things will be fine. But we should be very conscious that we are reading leftist oriented NCRT textbooks, but the government sitting there is a rightist oriented. That doesn't mean undermine the importance and autonomy of UPSC, but still, sir, one has to be a bit aware of that. So when it comes to ancient Indian book like R.S. Sharma, medieval India is written by Satish Chandra, and modern India is written by Bipin Chandra. One has to definitely go through these things, but should be a bit aware that whatever has been written in the books should not completely accept that is the only reality. We should take it as if it is one of the perspectives and try to see from alternative sources, because nowadays we do have many rightist historians also publishing their books, and with the booming up of the social media, we do have many alternative perspectives. At the same time, one has to again careful not to fall into their trap and consider it as a reality. So it's some kind of a balancing act must be done, keeping in mind the leftist perspective as well as the rightist, and come to a more objective kind of an yes, sir. But then that I think we should not put that burden completely on students again. A teacher in the classroom must play the role of that balancing thing, sir.
Also, sir, I mean, how much importance should aspirants give to archaeology, inscriptions, and ancient terms that I'm not sure how frequently they appear in the papers? I mean, are they worth the time?
Sir, not much, sir, because one, we should keep one thing in mind. The very purpose of including history as a part of the syllabus for civil service aspirants is not that they become experts in history or historians or archaeologists. Definitely some amount of knowledge is required, but instead of going too deep into them and wasting time, going into the technicalities of how archaeology is done, what kind of inscriptions you have, definitely those things which come across in the traditional sources, that much we must understand, sir. But again, I don't think it's worthy enough to really go into the depths and try to unravel everything.
Sir, also let's time travel to medieval India. This section is where students lose track of, who invaded whom, etc., with such Delhi-centric history, so as to say. How can one study it systematically without going insane completely?
Sir, again, what comes here is timeline. Once we have the correct chronological order of the events as they've happened, and again, that should be done in the classroom by the teacher. If that framework is given, students will definitely not struggle as to understand what even came before and what happened afterwards. But once you lose the track, then everything will get muddled up, and then you will start feeling it as a burden. They are, because you do not know when did Babur come, when was the Vijayanagar Empire, when was Sri Krishna Devaraya, and without that order, sir, that's where I think students really suffer. And the way our NCRT books have been written, particularly there is one set of books, sir, called Themes in Indian History. There's a big problem with that set of books, so to say, because it is not focused much on political history. Rather, they have given too much of importance to social economic history. Whereas the set of books written by R.S. Sharma, Bipin Chandra, and Satish Chandra and Bipin Chandra, they focus more on political history. So again, if you want to get a holistic perspective, you'll have to, the demand of the UPSC is that put both of these things together, and then perhaps you should understand that.
Do you also think that the focus on medieval history has changed in UPSC, maybe less on kings, more on institutions, more on culture now?
Definitely, sir. We can see that a palpable change there. I think, sir, this is not just in case of medieval, but to some extent in ancient as well. Previously, there were some areas which were never being focused on. And there's a very common adage with respect to UPSC, expect the unexpected. So they have been trying to touch upon those areas which they feel that since long students have neglected those. For example, in 2025 this year, mains, we had a question asking to discuss Akbar's religious syncretism. And that's a direct question, which is very straightforward, sir. But again, it has some contextual importance to the present situation of the country. So looking at the kind of communal tensions that keep flaring up now and then, probably that was an indication to say that, yeah, that is the kind of secular approach we should have.
Yes. So moving to modern India, the freedom struggle also feels, of course, it's emotionally rich, but it is also fact heavy, right? So what's the best way to build on the chronological clarity here?
We need to track that story right from 1857. We understand 1885 year, the formation of Congress is a very landmark important area for beginning of national movement. But the national sentiments in this country, which were in a more unorganized form, we can say to some extent they started from 1857 itself, when the different diverse sections of this country started realizing that they have a common enemy in the form of Britain. But only that these people did not know what to make of this country after they kick out the British. And seeds come from seeds of nationalism, we can say, start from that 1857 revolt, sir. But then the formation of INC kinds of gives it an organized platform where Indians from different parts of the country, irrespective of what section of the society they belong to, they can come there, say unitedly that we are all Indians. And perhaps from there, as you should be aware, sir, and students, many of them should also be aware that we have three phases in the national movement: moderate, extremist, and the Gandhian phase. Again, it's all about understanding why do we divide the national movement into three phases? Because it's just like one set of leaders come, they come with their own methodologies and ideologies, they have some ideas and they have some methods about reaching those ideas. But when they outlive their purpose, and some next generation's leaders will come with young blood, and they said, yeah, your methods aren't working. We don't see much results coming out of yours. Probably will let us give a try for our methods. And that's when extremists come. And again, when extremists also are not able to produce the desired results, then enters Gandhi. Once you have this kind of overall picture, sir, fitting in facts, as you said, definitely modern India is fact heavy, sir. So with this framework in mind, yeah, we can easily fit those facts there.
So that almost answers my next question. I was about to ask you that, because many aspirants do treat modern India as, pure events, right? As you said as well. But do you think it should also be understood more as an evolution of the political consciousness in the country, as you said right now?
So the point is not just about kicking the British away, but the question is, after the British are gone, what kind of a political system that we wish to build in this country? So that we generally postpone it to study in post-independence, sir. And that's when the overlap comes between polity, history, and governance, and all these issues. So many students are in the misconception that modern India is all about we uniting and kicking the British away. Oh, okay, that will be done at some point of time. Even the British knew that very well. That they also know it's practically impossible to hold on to such a big country forever. There will come a day when they would pack their bags, but then what should be the post-independent India's political and social system? And that's what I think, sir, are some of the major political fractures that we see in India today. There was a set of group of people who started saying that representing Muslim nationalism. And now they say that we aren't Indians. We don't want to stay with Indians. Give us a separate land. And now an offshoot out of that is the Hindu nationalism that gave rise to bodies like RSS and all these things. And trying to balance these people was the INC, which was trying to say, or following a more composite nationalism, saying that we Hindus and Muslims and all these people do not try to overemphasize your religious identity, rather subordinate your religious identity to the national identity and identify yourself first as Indians. But then the problems are that we must understand that India's national feelings started emerging in a colonial environment. And without that colonial environment, if you would have had got our nationalism, the trajectory would have been very different. And the British were choosing whom to support and try to put a check on the rising nationalistic tendencies. I think that's what has led to this partition and the kind of political system we have today, sir.
So how can, as you said, because there is an overlap, how can students connect modern history with, say, ethics or maybe governance, since many freedom movements do, the idea especially, do overlap with democratic thought and moral thought. So how do we go about it?
Modern India is not just about kicking away the British, but what kind of system we do bring in its place. So that's when all these ideologies that started emerging in Europe just a few centuries ago, whether it is capitalism or socialism or communism. Now, some people wanted to make India a communist country, like the Communist Party of India. Even Bhagat Singh, to a lot extent, got influenced by that communist ideology. Now the point is that once we take up that communist ideology, India, there would not be any kind of private property and all these things in India. But the question is, these competing ideological leaders at that point of time were trying to pull India in their own direction. But that's what Congress was trying to do, was trying to balance all these things in a way. And Gandhi is one such pivotal point where he's trying to keep hold on to all the Hindus and Muslims, upper caste, lower caste, and all these people. Because the concept is not simply political, but there are so many social, cultural, ethical, moral dimensions that are involved in handling such a kind of a diverse country, uniting them and taking forward. Definitely, sir, if we can pick up the quotations of the different leaders, we can get the essence of their ideas. For instance, I can take one of the quotation of Gandhi. He'll say, we are first Indians and next anything else. That is, your Hindus or Muslims and all these things will come secondary. Now, this is a quotation maybe that person, Gandhi gave in the context of national movement. But can we really use it in our governance and our ethics papers? Definitely overlap, you can definitely find, sir.
So, sir, let's talk about world history, since you have mentioned already about the world drowning in ideologies. So, because for many, world history is the optional inside GS, right? How can aspirants again make sense of all these revolutions and all these wars and yet still not be too overwhelmed by ideologies?
All the revolutions that we study, sir, for example, the American Revolution, French Revolution, these are the two most important. And in a technological field, we have this Industrial Revolution. All of these things, once we should first understand that there was something called Renaissance in world history. Now, with the Renaissance, the Europeans got something which the rest of the world lacked at that point of time, that is a modern way of thinking. Only problem with us is we confuse between that modern and Western way of thinking. We try to go on imitating the Western people. But I think, sir, in 2013, when UPSC introduced world history as part of syllabus of general studies, The primary intention was that to understand how Europe was able to rise to such a big status. Probably we can borrow some ideas from them and also build on them. But that doesn't mean that we should go on copying them and imitating them. Whatever they did, so we should do the same thing. And probably, sir, as you're saying, ki revolutions and all, how do you make sense? Sir, as my teaching goes, sir, I like putting myself in the place of those people who are doing that revolutions. Now you sit in Hyderabad and think about American Revolution, what happened there. Why are you struggling so much? Why don't you put yourself in the shoes of those people? If people are unhappy with the government, then they go for a revolution. So you should simply ask yourself a question. What were some issues that those people in those times had, or grievances they had against their government, that forced these people to rise in revolt against their governments and overthrow them? And what were the motivating ideas? And there do we get some people like John Locke, sir, the theory of liberalism and all. And again, we should not get drowned in ideologies, as you say, but a mention of these thinkers and their ideologies, which have motivated people to do the revolutions, must definitely be a part of your answers.
So that fetches the bonus mark
Definitely,
itself.
that adds weight to your answer and flavor, sir.
So, given that UPSC does not always ask world history every year, how much effort is, justified? Is it high risk, low reward, or is there some hidden scoring zone that you feel?
Given that the weightage of world history has been very fluctuating, sir. There are many years there is not a single question on world history. That's where students make a mistake. We feel that only when direct questions are asked, we should give weightage. But the point is, sir, what we learn in world history may not be that year. If you're not fortunate enough, you may not get a direct question on that. But the knowledge doesn't go waste. You can actually showcase it in your essay, showcase it in ethics, and having a good understanding of world history, sir, will always be essential for IR, international relations. So even though we are not getting good number of questions directly in the form of world history, the knowledge will be definitely handy. And suppose we go to the walk into the interviews that year, a student who's cleared the mains and goes to the interview. So what is the guarantee that there will be no world history question that in the interview? So there's always be a chance, sir. So given that number of questions are fluctuating, not good amount of weightage is being given. I'll say, sir, in the classroom, I really take 35 to 40 hours maximum, sir. And that should be fine for a coaching. And apart from that, if you can study the basic NCRTs, two NCRTs are there, sir, by Mr. Arjun Dev, those two NCRTs and the PYQs with model solved answers, I think that should be more than sufficient. And instead of simply mugging up what happened there, try to understand how I can use this knowledge in other papers. So that will be in a more
The connection.
sir, making the connections are more important. Suppose we learn about Napoleon, but learning about Napoleon, you may not get a question on Napoleon. But what are some characteristic features from Napoleon's strategy? How he unified his country, how he protected his country from the onslaught of European monarchs and all. Probably those things we can use Napoleon's strategy as an example of leadership quality. This is how we can make some connections, sir.
Also, sir, post independence, India is often skipped, even though it does explain how our democracy evolved. Now, first question is why is it ignored? And second is how should one approach it?
Sir, again, same. Why is it ignored? Because till 2013, post-independence was not a part of the syllabus itself. And the impression for the students, because we come from the era where our last attempts were in those years. So till 2013, the syllabus of UPSC for history for UPSC was such that your history of India ends in 1947. But what we do not understand is what has ended in 1947 is only one chapter of Indian history. But what has started is our true glorious Indian history from after since 1947, right? And that is one primary reason I feel, sir. And second is that again UPSC not giving too much of questions is one reason why students do not much focus there. And probably one reason why UPSC is not asking too many questions straight away from post-independence is whatever has happened after 1947 till now, sir, can be called as post-independence. So for instance, we take this concept of Naxalism. Naxalism is actually covered as part of security paper. But if you see in a larger way, Naxalism can also be put as part of post-independence because it's happened after 1947. We can talk about economic reforms in 1991, Green Revolution, White Revolution. All of these things have essentially happened after 1947. But most of these things are actually covered as part of other subjects. So when coming to post-independence, these are the reasons why I think people generally neglect or ignore post-independence part. They do not understand the value of it. But then how to approach it? Again, the same goes. There is one NCERT which I'm really fond of, particularly. There's a book called Politics in India Since Independence. If we try to read that book, page to head to head, okay, probably that will give you a nice chronological flow of the political development that have happened in India. But again, that will not be sufficient, sir. There are so many big fat books in the market by Ramachandra Guha and there's Vipin Chandra who's written those books. Again, only point is we should be aware that Ramachandra Guha or Vipin Chandra both are of one political orientation, and that is leftist. So unless and until you take the right angle, probably you will end up putting yourself as a biased person in front of the examiner.
But I mean, we do have that vacuum from the now we are witnessing the rise of various authors, right, who are putting in the right perspective, the right side of perspective.
Right side of that, sir.
Whether right or wrong is something that they can decide, but the right side of perspective. So also because topics like post-independence, they also strengthen answers in GS2 and ethics as well, right? For example, when discussing administration or say values of nation building. So you think this is also a very justified stand that we should have some connect, especially a historical facts being quoted in paper 2 and 3.
No, sir, yes, sir. Exactly. We must, sir, because it doesn't make sense studying about things in vacuum. When you can't really apply your theoretical knowledge and show that historical events which have motivated this new way of thinking. That's where having knowledge about the post-independence will help us, sir. How our national leaders had to overcome many challenges and try to fulfill the dream of the constitution makers in trying to take India in the direction which they wanted to.
So also for art and culture, I mean, aspirants either adore it or dread it completely. So why is it such a mysterious portion, after all these readings of Singhanias and CCRTs and the fine arts and CRT? What's the concern?
So to some extent, I feel students are justified in feeling frustrated with art and culture section, sir. Because as I just now said in the very beginning of the discussion, if you ask me if there any one component which is very fact heavy and too factual, that is art and culture, sir. Definitely there are some themes and these things like architecture, literature, painting and all. Too many facts, sir. That's the reason I think students really find it difficult to get over this section, and they're justified in doing so.
So, sir, what's the best way to study art and culture? By region, by chronology, or by themes? And how to remember those endless temple and dance details?
So the best way to go about is themes, sir. First we go architecture, literature. We divide this into several segments, and within them we take the chronology as the main. Within architecture, ancient, medieval, modern. That's where we go. And within that, we'll have to find out the regional variations as well. For suppose we go for temple architecture. And again, in temple architecture, you'll have Hindu temples, Islamic temples will come. And in modern India, we do get some churches and all this, religious architecture. And again, within ancient, we'll have Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain. This is the thematic way of handling architecture. And again, within Hindu, we'll have to go for chronology. And within that chronology, we'll have to understand North Indian Nagara style, South Indian Dravidiya style, and Central India, that is Deccan part, that is Vesara style. Same goes for Buddhism, Jainism, and even Sikhism comes somewhere in medieval India. Theme we should go first, and then chronology. And within that chronological order, we should find out for the regional
Region.
variations.
Okay. So, theme, chronology, and region.
Yes, sir. That will be a better way for them to handle that.
Also, sir, how much of art and culture today is linked with current affairs? I mean, festivals, UNESCO sites, and maybe cultural diplomacy. So, how should aspirants keep a track of all this?
I think that's best way is to go through some current affairs magazines, because I'll definitely not suggest students to go for any in-depth research. For instance, this year, in the beginning of this year, we had something like Kumbh Mela. Now, definitely around that time, I've seen so many newspapers and news articles carrying some historical significance of this, the spiritual symbolism behind that Sangam and all these things. And probably doing some basic research, what is appearing in the newspaper, should be more than sufficient, sir. Because unnecessarily you start digging into the details, the good hole goes so deep that you really again get lost. And sometimes I've seen students who get too much interested in these things, sir, and they kind of end up doing research on these things and not losing that practical exam orientedness. So what all is appearing in the newspapers and particularly the current affair magazines people use, sir, there'll be a section of history and art and culture. I think if they kind of be abreast with that, that should be fine. Yeah, definitely, sir.
In recent years, there has been a strong discussion about rewriting Indian history, right? From these colonial interpretations to civilizational resurgence. I mean, the rise of in authors like Vikram Sampath and Sandeep Balakrishnan. I mean, Akshi Jain has been doing great job in this regard so long. What's your take on this trend?
That's what, sir. That's where I'll introduce this word historiography. Because, sir, many of us, the way we have been taught history in our childhood, we have only heard the word history and we equate history with past, which is completely erroneous in my opinion. Because history is not equal to the past events. History is the study of the past. But who studies that past, with what sources they study the past also does matter. So I say, commonly keep telling in the classroom, sir, that not only study the history, study the historian. Because the person who is interpreting that past event, because you and I have not directly gone and seen that. He is an expert, he or she is an expert who has done the study of the past, but we cannot take one person's perspective as completely final and authentic, and there is no possibility of any alternative perspectives on that event. For example, if we take Gandhi, sir, personality Gandhi. Now, Gandhi is portrayed in one way in front of us, but there are many other hidden aspects of Gandhi which have never been brought into public domain. For instance, the only thing that has been always talked about Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, is that non-violence. As if this man has nothing else to say ever. And in my opinion, sir, one particular theme on which Gandhi really worked and that he actually represents his very lifestyle and dressing pattern is that he used to, although he did not use these words exactly maybe, but his intention is that, sir, कि cultural independence is as important as political independence. That you think you are expelling the British people from the land, it's okay, that is political independence. But that is just the beginning of the path of independence. You will need to really get rid of the influence of the Western culture on our minds, which is not visible to us. So that aspect of cultural decolonization, I think, sir, it is coming into public domain in the recent times. And two factors, I think, sir, have contributed to this rethinking, as you're saying, and rewriting on the history textbooks is 2014, a political shift that has happened with the BJP coming to power. They have a different ideology from the Congress, as well as the booming of the social media. Till 2014, when Congress was in the power, they had their own ideology. The textbooks used to represent the same ideology, and the mass media was also full of the same ideology. And the voices which did not get expression is what social media has given to them. And more adding to that fact, BJP being in power is kind of both a bottom up and a top down approach, is all of a sudden shooting into the minds of the people. Those aspects of the past which have been brushed under the carpet and are now coming to see the light. And I think that this kind of changing technological and as well as political environment is the main factor responsible for the demand for rewriting history textbooks, resurgence of this cultural civilizational identity. At the same time, sir, again, we should not fall into the trap that whatever the rightist say is correct. At the end of the day, take the both leftist and the rightist and try to balance them out.
So, sir, do you think this rewriting is helping students understand Indian culture better, or is it just creating a sense of confusion between, say, ideology or evidence? What do you feel?
Yes, sir. To some extent, sir, if a student is not guided by a proper teacher or a mentor, probably they will go hayward, sir, because they will get divided. What they see in the books and what they see in the media might be slightly different. And now we cannot trash everything that comes in WhatsApp and in YouTube as simply wrong interpretations or the propaganda. There will be some element of truth in their point of view also. That's when you require someone to guide you properly. And once you get a nice teacher or a mentor, sir, probably you'll know how to see the pros and cons in this perspective and pros and cons in this perspective without assuming that both are completely correct or both are completely wrong. Without that, sir, definitely, as you're saying, one will end up confused.
So, how should aspirants handle this clash, between the traditional Indian historiography, as you said, and the Western academic interpretations, while still staying exam relevant? Because that's the whole point. So, how do we handle this, sir?
It's better in the examination perspective, sir. We should know many things, what are all going in the market, in the textbooks. We should have a hold on that. At the same time, we should be politically intelligent, academically relevant. Without that, you simply go and dump all that you know in the exam and you think you are going to get good marks. That's not going to happen, sir. We should always stick to the demand of the question. Sir, for suppose they've asked me about Akbar's religious syncretism. Now, I might be knowing 100 things about Akbar. But then the question that is being asked, I'll have to restrict myself over there. And it doesn't mean that everything that we know, we go and start writing about that. So we need to draw that line, sir. And politically intelligent, what I mean by that is, even though it's BJP in power, doesn't mean that you go and start writing all rightist views so that expecting you'll get good marks. No, that is also rubbish. Because UPSC, at the end of the day, is an autonomous body and it will have that autonomy. And probably one has to maintain, if you write only leftist views, that's what, if you go only by one perspective, you're again destroying your own career. Try to write one, whatever you're writing, give a justifying evidence for that. So don't simply throw points in the air and say that Gandhi was like this, Nehru did this, Savarkar did this. If you're saying something, provide a solid evidence for that. And if you're seeing the positive side of it, try to see one negative. If you're writing too many negatives of anything, write one positive. That will kind of make you balanced and irrespective of the ideological orientation of the examiner, sir. I think that person, if he's genuinely an academician, not looking at it from a political lens, this kind of an answer, everything given with justifications and with both the sides, I probably, sir, student should not really face any problem.
Fact check is important. Well, that's true. That's true. So, and also just to extend this point, there's a lot of talk about rediscovering India's cultural consciousness, etc. So, I mean, how can aspirants, beyond the exam also, how can aspirants genuinely appreciate that without falling into a sense of bias or maybe sloganeering? What do you feel? Generally also, how would we?
Keeping outside the exam thing, sir, as you're saying, as a general citizen of this country, one has to know about their own country's past. Without that, like you're like a tree without roots. So I'll just try to explain my point through an example, sir. From childhood, we are all taught our national anthem, Janagana Mana Adinayaka Jaya. Usually in classrooms, sir, I ask my students, how many of you know the meaning of that song? Hardly anyone picks up the hand, sir. Now, in a classroom of 100 and 150 students, and we have all been singing this song, our national anthem, we say proudly our national anthem, national anthem. But when I ask you here, what is the meaning? And that's not any Russian or any Latin or Greek language. That's our language. Jana, Gana, Mana, Adhinayaka, Jaya Hai. This much we are not able to understand, sir. And that is the pitiful state of the common citizen of this country, leave alone the students who are coming for the civil services. And unfortunately, because of this lack of understanding of your own country's national anthem, sir, I think we would, and that too something which we have been repeating all the childhood. Forget about digging into the past, doing the time travel and knowing about our own country. So definitely some element of cultural consciousness must be put into our minds of the next generation, sir, because it's not just about living your life and enjoying your life and dying. There's some element that you should do something for your country. And perhaps that is what brings many people to the civil services, sir.
It shows two very clear things. One is the rote learning that we have been told to, and second is the cultural apathy that people have in general, right? Sir, if you also zoom out a bit, what's the difference between studying history to clear UPSC and studying it to truly understand India?
Problems comes from childhood, sir. School education has never inculcated any interest in our own history. I think as of now, if UPSC simply says history will be removed from the syllabus portion, I think the students, most of them will feel happy. कि भाई एक burden कम हुआ है अंटे even today all we have that syllabus, they don't see it as an opportunity for learning about your own country. And if you learn about your own country, you'll understand the social dynamics, the cultural understand values of the people. And when you are as IAS officer, IPS officer on the field, probably you will be very sensitive to their values, their history. Because if you're aware of these things, probably you can deal those things in a better way. But situation is that if UPSC removes history from the syllabus, now people will jump in joy that a burden has been reduced. So that is the kind of apathy we have towards our history. But I feel, sir, as you said, every citizen of this country must know something about their cultural roots. Otherwise, we will be taken for a toss. And there is one beautiful quotation, sir. I don't recollect the person who has given that. History is not a burden on the mind, memory. It is an illumination of the soul. And to add on this, I recollect one more quotation, sir, that actually summarizes what you asked me in a very beautiful way. The most effective way to destroy a people is to deny them their own sense of history and foist upon them a fabricated history by the colonial masters. And we have always been seeing India through a Western lens, sir. We are not at all seeing India from our own side. And whatever they say, we kind of accept it as true.
Not just accept, but we say that's the only truth.
Wonderful, sir. Yes, not only accepting as truth, that is the only truth. That's the kind of biasedness that has come into our mind.
Even though we see a lot of research being done by great historians nowadays, any counter argument is not sufficient enough because that's been ingrained deep inside our mind.
So they simply brush it off as propaganda. Now you have seen, sir, just now you've taken some names, Vikram Sampath, Meenakshi Jain. These are all on the right side of the spectrum. But then you just simply can't say that what these people are saying.
Just look at the research that they have done to write those books.
Is a Supreme Court advocate, sir. The kind of books he has written. But then when I utter these names, my students in the classroom generally are unaware.
So let's talk strategy now. With so many sources, PDFs, Telegram compilations, how can someone build a minimal, efficient book list?
Sir, start with NCRTs and
To be precise, which ones?
so that's the problem. We have some old set of NCRTs and new NCRTs. So old are the ones which I say Ancient India by R.S. Sharma, Medieval India by Satish Chandra, Modern India by Bipin Chandra. The good part of this book, sir, I feel, is the chronological order they maintain. But there is a small catch there. The problem is that language is slightly complicated. And unless and until you study these three books in that order, you will not be able to make head and tail of it. But then if we study that and we think it's done, again we do a mistake over there. There is a second set of NCRTs, themes in Indian history, where the social cultural part of the historical aspects have been covered in greater depth. So after doing these political aspects, the social cultural aspects, again the work is not done, sir. All these are again on the left side of the political spectrum. To some extent, you will have to ask many questions. Whatever is the perspective of these books on particular personality or event, we should not take it granted for that is the truth. For suppose, sir, there's many events like Khilafat non-cooperation movement. Now, one set of people have one perspective, but if you see the other side of the perspective, there's a whole lot of different world that opens up. Now, you want to say this is trash? Now, that's what the rightists do, that what you say is trash. These people do the same thing, what you say is trash. I feel, sir, we need to find out one or two good points from both the sides and weave them together and go in a balanced way. Book list, sir, is not easy to say. इतना तो बोल सकते हैं कि follow the NCRTs and don't think they are the complete facts. Because if I start going on telling the books of the rightist authors, the list becomes too big.
So for answer writing, how can aspirants make their history answers analytical, not just some factual recitations? What do you feel should be incorporated?
Sir, for this purpose, I think students must have ready-made introductions and conclusions on the standard topics that are generally the focus areas of UPSC, sir. For instance, if you take Indus Valley Civilization, everyone knows that's a very prominent area, focus area for UPSC. If you do not have a ready-made introduction and a standard conclusion, probably in the examination will find it difficult to craft an introduction and a conclusion and then and there itself. And trying to explore all the different dimensions, like as usually every teacher says this, the social, political, economic, technological, religious dimensions, and have a ready-made structures for the questions. For example, sir, last year or 1 or 2 years ago, they asked a question on Vedic age. The question was not simply about what are the features of Vedic society and age. How many of those features are still relevant to the modern society? Now that is a question which you will not find in the standard textbooks. That's where students, what they study in the class and the textbooks, they must try to see around them in the daily life. For example, you can write about Gayatri Mantra. Gayatri Mantra was there in that Rig Veda since such long time. But even today, we've seen many of the ceremonies done among the Hindus. We do find the recitation of Gayatri Mantra very frequently. We do have that Varna system, which has kind of got distorted and into the caste system. That Varna system again takes birth from Rig Veda. So, sir, facts must be written, but as justifications of a argument that you're making. If you just go on dumping facts, definitely the examiner will understand that you have only superficial knowledge. Facts must be used. Without facts, sir, again answer will feel unsubstantiated. Give facts, but as a substantiating evidences of some arguments that you're making in the answer.
Like the garam masala, too much of it is bad, too less makes it bland. True. Sir, now coming to the prelims, the most feared battlefield for a lot of aspirants. So, how to remember dynasties, dates, art forms without going blank in the exam?
Normally, they do make a short note, sir. For every ancient India, medieval India, they have a short. But when it comes to mugging up facts, I say that they need to make some separate lists of all the important wars, of all the dynasties at one place, all the authors and books at one place, all the foreign travelers who had visited India at one place. So probably having these cheat cards kind of things, fully fact, there is nothing concept over there. It is pure for memory purpose, sir. And two things will come handy for the student here. One is repetition, sir. Now that's must. Without repetition, now even faculty find it difficult to recall those facts, sir. Second thing is some mnemonic techniques that you can put. Either you take the first letters of all that series and try to make a kind of a acronym or something like that, or something of these sorts, sir. I think list approach will be one for the prelims fact intensive revision.
Great, because I think the easiest way to remember is to revise over and over again the same source, right? As we keep on saying that, reading the same book multiple times rather than reading multiple books. At once. Sir, also has UPSC's trend shifted recently from rote facts to more concept based or maybe more cultural context based questions? What do you feel?
To some extent, sir, definitely we can see a difference in the orientation of UPSC because the number of students appearing for the exam has increased, the number of institutes available, the market, the material that is available, both that's flooding the offline and online market. So many videos available, sir. The competition has increased. UPSC is also raising the bar. And as I just now said, sir, the UPSC is particularly asking your application oriented knowledge. Vedic features of Vedic society, everyone would write. But how many of those features you see in the present day society? Now, that part of the answer, sir, definitely one has to apply their mind. So, that is where I think UPSC is making a shift, sir. I am able to recall one more question in the same line with respect to world history, sir. The question was, what is world industrial revolution? Why did it start in England? Now, these are the two things which we'll find in every standard book. But the third part of the question is what is interesting. Compare the conditions of Britain in the early stages of industrialization with the present conditions of India. Now, this part is definitely testing you and your understanding of the subject and how you can bring those things and apply to and write a good answer in. Yes, sir. Yes, this shift we can definitely observe.
Sir, also, if you had to redesign the history syllabus, what would you remove? What would you add? Or what would you teach differently to make it more meaningful?
Sir, to some extent, there is a necessity to change the history syllabus because there are many elements which have been underemphasized. For instance, sir, if we take contribution of Sikhism to this country, when I read medieval India, because that was the time around which Sikhism was born, I hardly find any elements of Sikhism and the great contributions of the gurus to this history of this country. There is nothing, almost nothing written about them. If we consider the northeastern parts, again, hardly you will find anything written about northeastern parts. To some extent, as you yourself said some time back, the history is very Delhi-centric. Hardly any contribution of South India.
Small dynasties being given too much of weightage. A home kingdom we don't even know of, right? Martandavarmam, no discussion. That's true.
That is one aspect, sir. I think we should include. I generally not focus more on removing things, sir, but it's better to add things. It might make it slightly burdensome, but then it will definitely give us a newer perspective, sir. Like Sikh history, Northeastern history, Southern history, and to some extent, sir, I believe Kashmir's history must also be given because Kashmir nowhere figures anywhere in the discussions. Yes, please. And given that Kashmir is such a strategically located and troubled area, students of this country, children of this country must know their roots of Kashmir.
At least it had some better recordings of events.
Yes, no, sir. Exactly.
Slightly better.
Kalhana, exactly. So definitely one has to be aware of those things. And coming to medieval India, sir, I have some specific additions which I feel must be made. Too much has been discussed about Aurangzebs. Too much has been discussed about Ghaznis and Ghuris. But not much about Dharashikos. not much about Ras Khans, not much about Ibrahim Adil Shah too, who writes a book. He's coming from, I think, sir, Bijapur Sultan. He's a Sultan. Ibrahim Adil Shah too writes a book called Kitab e Nauras. That's a book on music. And being a Muslim Sultan, he opens the book with an invocation to Hindu god Ganesha. And where do you find that kind of secularism that is being put in the books? Now, there is a person in Kashmir, sir, Sikandar Shah. He is considered to be an iconoclast, idol breaker. Now, I say, write about him also, but also write about one of his successor by name Zainul Abidin, who was one of the most secular kings of Kashmir. So, by providing these kind of extra points, we will be giving a good role model to the next generation, sir. Otherwise, you are ending up only cooking up some kind of biased minds. So perhaps, sir, these are some of the changes I think should be done. And coming to specifically to modern India, sir, modern India and post-independence, alternative perspectives also must be written, brought forward. For instance, many people do not know that the contributions of Bhagat Singh's, Chandrasekhar Azad, Subhash Chandra Bose, all these people have just been reduced to the footnotes, never highlighted. Savarkar has become a kind of a very controversial name. The very word you utter Savarkar and people start saying Hindutva and all these things. They do not do any research on that, sir. They don't read one line on RSS. They don't read one line on Hindutva. They don't read one line on Hindu Mahasabha. They do not know anything about Madan Mohan Malaviya. But they're ready to give opinions. Don't do research and simply talk. I think that is one thing. And I'm not saying, sir, that these people are correct. I'm simply saying come to a rational discussion. No. Why are you simply, without doing any research, you do not have any right to comment. Do some research and then you comment. We accept it. Without doing any research, you'll simply start blabbering. I think, sir, these are some of the changes, sir, should be done.
That's eulogizing some, like, say, Aurangzeb or maybe even Tipu Sultan to such an extent that, you forget all the crimes that he committed, and then making devils out of some. I think we should just Google search for Andaman jail to understand the issues there.
And when I say these things, sir, people start branding us. That this guy is of this orientation, this guy is of that orientation. I say, forget about my orientation. Ask yourself your orientation. Where do you stand? Did you do some sufficient research on both the sides? Or are you only standing on one side and shouting at the other? Get there, get both the sides. I am not saying to be on this or that side. I am saying follow the path of Buddha, middle path, Madhyama Marga. That's when I think, sir, we will be really living up to the motto of this country, Satyameva Jayate. It is not left should win or right should win, country should win.
So, as an expert, you do believe that we need to have a wholesome viewpoint, which is missing completely, especially at least in the UPSC level, we should provide that.
At this point of time, I cannot expect all the children of this country will get to that level. But if the change comes from those intellectuals who are preparing for civils, probably they are the future policy makers and they can make a difference in the future. Sir.
And so, one final question: after spending years immersed in the past, what's one timeless lesson that history gives to aspirants who are writing their own story?
Again, I'll go through a quotation, sir. That's by Winston Churchill. The farther you look back, further forward you can see. So, without understanding what has happened and where we stand, we cannot peep into the future because it's all a continuum, sir. We are standing in the present, want to leap into the future. Where will you get that knowledge and experience from which you can leap into that future? I think that is what that accumulated experiences of so many people and that civilizational heritage, one should take that as the guiding light for our march into the dark future, probably bringing light to the country and the world.
That's great. Thank you so much, sir. And now that history has this, funny way of teaching us the same lesson over and over and over again. And the ones who learn from the past write the future. I'm Anubhav Saransh, and this is the GS Room, where the curious meets the serious. Jai Hind.